Hey guys,
Hello, sir.
How are you?
How are you doing?
Hello there, sir.
let me see. I'm trying. I cannot hear you. Oh, I'll take this out. I don't think they're working. Nasılsın?
İyidir, teşekkürler.
Nasılsın? Everything all right?
İyidir,
I'm in the Stone Age. I'm in the Stone Age when it comes to technology. What's happening?
Not at
Everything
all,
all
sir.
right? And please don't call
Thank
me
you so
sir.
much.
My name is Euripides.
Euripides.
I simply want to congratulate you for taking the initiative to do whatever you're doing and trying to bring the youth together, because you know the message usually is the future belongs to the young, the future belongs to the new generation. It is the present that belongs to the young generation, because the present that formulates the future. So it's good to be engaged. In the ancient Greeks, do you guys know where the word idiot comes from? The
No.
word.
I can have a guess.
Okay, Janos, have a guess.
Yes, if I had to guess, it comes from Evriviades, which means comes from private.
Exactly, because in the ancients used to say, "Don't be an idiot, don't be an idiotis, only concerned with yourself, but with the public good and with the public." So that's what you're doing, and congrats.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I was about to say sir, not sir.
No. Euripides is my name. Anglicized, it becomes Euripides, just as when you say Evropi, anglicized becomes Europe. But I've been called worse things in my life. I respond to many things.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm ready to answer any questions, or we can talk very, very freely and touch whatever subjects you like. Of course, the closest Cyprus, which deserves much better for all its people.
We agree.
100%. Yeah, 100% agreed. Okay,
Right,
Berk, is sound okay? So you guys.
Yeah. The sound is okay. I just wanted to to put these earplugs on because they sound better. But and just to say that obviously I'm speaking in a personal capacity. I have no connections, none whatsoever, with the government. I did serve Cyprus diplomacy for 43 years, since from 76 until late 2019. My last post was High Commissioner in London, but these are all yesterday stories. Right now, I am, I still cannot say the R word, the retirement, but I have no connection with the government whatsoever. So I speak my mind, and it is a very good feeling.
Yeah, we listened to your discussions. It was totally amazing. Personally, as a Cypriot, I feel like so proud, and kind of
About
I think I saw the same hour.
I missed what you said. I missed what you said about.
I said I watched the discussion between you and the Professor Ünal.
Professor Ünal, okay. Al Arabiya.
Yes.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
I watched and I shared with my friends, and I feel much like really proud that there is someone who's speaking of our mind and Cypriotness, and that we exist, and we are not just some sub part of some other countries and some other nations. We are Cypriots, and we are here, and we are here with our questions, with our little annoying questions.
Excellent. Let's.
Thank you so much,
and thank you for. It was an interesting debate with Professor Ünal. Of course, I always speak with respect and everything, but it was a bit of an eye opener in some ways. But okay, it's we have to deal with that kind of mentality as well, and we have to win them over through a genuine dialogue. Yeah.
True.
And you are ready with your questions, so go ahead, fire.
That's amazing.
Yes, actually.
Yes. Should I start? I planned on doing like a formal introduction, but I think Mr. Evripides, is that am I pronouncing it correctly?
Evripides, yes, and without the Mr.
Okay, okay. I'll try to tell myself not to say Mr., but I might slip sometimes. So I apologize for that.
Yeah. And you are Erdem.
Erdem, yes. Nice to
Erdem,
meet you.
Janos, and Berk. Okay, good. I got it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, as Berk said, I mean, we came across your video with Mr. Professor Ünal at Al Arabiya, and we felt that it would be good to have a discussion among Cypriots rather than a Greek Cypriot professor and Turkish professor. I think it would be more fruitful to have it amongst Cypriots for this time around, at least. Should I start? I'll start away with my question, if that's okay.
Sure.
I think you already made some points when you were in the video with Mr. Ünal, but I'm wondering, what do you think about? So to what extent do you think the Turkish Cypriots feel like that they're bypassed or insufficiently represented in these discussions? Because when I see in the mainstream a Greek Cypriot professor like yourself and a Turkish professor, I feel that as a Turkish Cypriot myself, I can only speak from that front. I feel like I am bypassed in some ways, and I was wondering, do you think Greek Cypriot society fully understands that there can be differences between the interests and political preferences of Turkish Cypriots, and that can be different from those of the government of Turkey?
I think most of them do understand that, Erdem. Most of them do understand that, but at the same time, they lump things as being monolithic, talking about the Turkish side, as it were, and they lump them together, and often, and that is a mistake. You know, thought-provoking, really. People that think, of course, understand the differences, that the Cypriot Turkish community is a very, very proud community. It has its own history. It has its own dramas. It has its own experiences, some of them good, some of them very, very bitter. They understand they're not one and the same as the professor would say, you know, the Turkish nation. Of course, at the same time, the feeling is that they are Cypriot Turks are a bit boxed in, if you know what I mean. Boxed in the sense that they cannot really trust the Cypriot Greeks, and at the same time they cannot really trust Turkey. But Turkey is the overwhelming power. You know, when we talk about the intercommunal talks, the power sharing structures between the two communities on the island, in my heart of hearts, Erdem, Janos, and Berk, I believe in my heart of hearts that as Cypriots, I think if left alone in a fundamentally new political context that we have been operating since 2004, which is European Union membership, I think we can solve any and all of our problems. But you have the overwhelming power, which often we do not talk about when we have the communal talks, and when we do, is Turkey. Turkey, right now, whether we like it or not, in reality holds the key. Holds the key. The Greeks, 67, 74, it was a Greek military junta, was despicable. It was EOKP, a terrorist organization. They staged a putsch against Makarios. Turkey comes in, and at the time, guys, the official communique that came out of Ankara, it said that we are taking this action in order to restore the status quo ante that was upset by the putsch. So that is exactly what the Treaty of Guarantee says. Take action. It does not enumerate what kind of action you take. It could be. It doesn't necessarily mean military action to restore the status quo. And actually, at the United Nations in November 2004, Resolution 3212, which calls about the refugees back to their home, the withdrawal of the foreign troops, Turkey actually voted for that resolution. People tend to forget that. Okay, so Greece wants to basically decouple from Cyprus. Okay, there is the affinity that we have with the language, with the religion, just as the Cypriot Turks have the affinity with Turkey and stuff like that. Fine. I do not see these things as antithetical. So to the degree that the Cypriot Greek community is fixated on Turkey, it is because they hold the key. And Mr. Erçika, the distinguished leader of the Cypriot Turkish community, said as much. He says, we cannot have an agreement on Cyprus. He said it a week ago, 10 days ago, I can't remember now. We cannot have an agreement without the consent and the agreement of Turkey. So Turkey is the power. Greece, we can handle Greece, okay? Like I said, they have their own problems with in the Balkans. They have their own problems with Turkey. They do not want to expand more diplomatic capital on Cyprus, and I say that despite the fact that post-junta Greece, it was democratic government. It helped us get into the European Union, and we're thankful for that, because that is the number one single strategic development that happens to Cyprus is European Union membership. But I come back to the same thing, and I shouldn't dominate that to the degree that the Cypriot Greek community says, well, it is Turkey. They say that because Turkey holds the key. We cannot go forward without Turkey, not because they dismiss the Cypriot Turkish community, which is, I repeat, a proud community with its own history, with its own characteristics. And mind you, their DNA, the Cypriot Turkish DNA, is much closer to the Cypriot Greek DNA and vice versa than my DNA, Cypriot Greek DNA, with mainland Greeks, or Cypriot Turkish DNA with the mainland Turks. Even our DNA is as Cypriots is closer together than these things. So I'm not evading the question. I hope I'm answering it. Bottom line is that to the degree that the Cypriot Greek community is fixated on Turkey is because Turkey has 40,000 troops on the island. Even if they all withdraw, they can always come back in less than 4 minutes time, flying time between Mersin to Nicosia. But not because they dismiss the Cypriot Turkish community, So I hope that answers. And if I'm not answering, grill me more.
Well, that was actually a very nice answer, and if I may, it actually gives me a very nice pass to one of my own questions. You talked about Turkey having the key, and there has been indeed a pattern of Turkish control over political affairs in the occupied side. We have the European Court of Human Rights especially ruling that Turkey has effective control over the north of Cyprus. We have, as you said, Erçika's statements, but not only that, we also have Mustafa Akinci's statement about interference in the 2020 election process with Ersin Tatar. What I want to ask you is, and also I would like to highlight that there is also a history of repression of the Turkish Cypriots. This has been indicated by recent crackdowns on protests, on satirical art directed toward Turkey. So my question would be, given that there is a pattern of the Turkish Cypriot leadership adhering to the demands of Turkey, more so than those of the Turkish Cypriot community, and also given that Turkish Cypriots are being actively repressed, is it a mistake to treat the Turkish Cypriot leaders as the only representatives of the Turkish Cypriot community? If so, should we not have Turkish Cypriot representation within the context of the Republic of Cyprus?
Well, that would have been the ideal. I mean, as you know, the France, for instance, they transform themselves. They evolved from having fifth, Second Republic, Third Republic, Fourth Republic. Now they're in the Fifth Republic. We have one republic. So it could have evolved. So if you have Cypriot Turks in the government, and if you have a situation whereby we had the vice president who could exercise veto, then things I think would have gone different. But it doesn't. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Even though you have close to 85%, if not higher, Cypriot Turks that have Republic of Cyprus passports, they have IDs. Therefore, they associate themselves with the republic. Then they do not recognize. Turkey says they do not recognize. So it is important to have elections. It is important to have a speaker of the Cypriot Turkish community, and it is better to have somebody like Mr. Erçika, certainly Mr. Akinci, than to have a Mr. Talat with respect, because he was a leader of the community. So I respect that. Much rather to deal with them than with those that are not inclined to have a compromise. But at the end of the day, we have to live on this island. We are baked under the same sun. We are not children of a lesser God. So we have to take the future in our own hands. Because this is not to be a racist, and I'm saying we do not want anybody else in Cyprus other than Cypriots, no. But at the same time, it is our own country, and there are serious issues facing us, not just the Cyprus question, the demographics. The demographics are really what is happening in the northern part, what is happening in the government control area of the republic. Everything is changing, and I believe we don't really have control of our own destiny. And this is 2026. I mean, we cannot be a satrapy of any other country. And I believe that if you could have like Gezilyurek, he became a member of the European Parliament under the Cyprus delegation, under one flag. I voted for Sener Levent, because even though I'm not ideologically inclined to be left, whatever Sener Levent is, but many of his articles that I write, I think, and his articles cut both ways. They are not just saying, the Cypriot Greeks are right or the Cypriot Greeks are totally wrong, or vice versa. I voted for him in the parliament, in the European parliamentary election. So I think I think that's the way to go forward.
Okay.
Okay, Janos. I do not know if I'm answering your question. If I'm not answering any of your questions, just
I appreciate that. No, you definitely have. Thank you.
I have the tendency to go in a tangent and sometimes have to dominate. So you Berk, as being the chair, can cut me off and can grill me.
No, that was an amazing answer, and we are all team here, and we always value nice questions and nice answers. I actually have a question, so it's the perfect moment. So on the debate or discussion, let's say, in the El Arabia that you had made, the Professor Ünal has argued that in an increasingly multipolar and unstable region, Turkey will always maintain a strategic military interest in Cyprus. And my question is, how can Cyprus realistically decouple its domestic peace process from broader regional geopolitical competition?
It's a huge question, Berk.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge question, and the Professor Ünal simply reiterated what many Turkish leaders have said. Ozal said that Cyprus is like a dagger pointed on the underbelly of Turkey, slicing the Anatolia Peninsula in half. Davutoglu, Professor Davutoglu also, and Foreign Minister Davutoglu, if you remember in his book Strategic Depths, said that even if there was not one single Muslim Turk, he didn't say Turkish Cypriot or Cypriot Turkish, Muslim Turk. Turkey has to have an interest on Cyprus because no country can remain indifferent to such an island that finds itself in its own vital space. I remember the word vital space, we can always Google it and get the exact quotation. So what the professor did, Berk, was simply to reiterate what has been said before, and which brings me to one of my central arguments in any of my debates and discussion, is that if somebody tries to understand the Cyprus problem as it has evolved, the Cyprus question as it has evolved, without really studying the region, without really studying what was America interest in the region, British interest in the region, Greek interest in the region, Turkish interest in the region, Israeli interest in the region, if one does not, and it's no accident that so many years after independence, the British still have 2 bases on the island, which are considered sovereign, which are not part of the Republic. Strictly speaking, and under international law 101, the Republic of Cyprus is all the territory of the Republic, east, west, north, south, except the 2 British bases. Even when the United Kingdom was member of the European Union, the bases on Cyprus, the British bases on Cyprus, were not part of the European Union. So that is the driving force. I believe one has to, there is the intercommunal aspect, of course. There were the troubles which are regrettable, of course. I go as far as to call it almost civil war, because there isn't a single country in the world that did not have any problems in nation building, and we had ours. But I think I come back because I want to keep the focus on that any serious study of the Cyprus question that does not examine the geopolitic situation or the geostrategic situation in the region, it begs the question. It does not answer the entire question why we are where we are today and why there was the intercommunal problems and the fightings and the putsch and the invasion. The putsch, everybody keeps saying, for instance, that the putsch was enosis. No, the putsch was not enosis. All the declassified documents that are coming out, all these things, no, it was to keep the cohesion of NATO. Remember Cold War. Remember that Kissinger and his ilk did not want to have a war between Greece and Turkey, because if that were to happen, the southern flank of NATO would open up and the Soviets would come in. So all these things have to be factored in for anybody to really have a holistic view of the Cyprus question. So what the Professor Yunal was saying basically is, no matter what happens, we will have an interest in Cyprus, a strategic interest in Cyprus. Because why? Because Turkey wants to control the Eastern Mediterranean. I mean, President Erdogan, to his credit, says so in an honest manner. Nothing is going to happen in the Eastern Mediterranean without our own approval. And that's what we're fighting against. I mean, right now it's almost a fight of decolonization and independence again, because we find ourselves in this region. I mean, the geographical position of Cyprus has been its blessing, but mostly has been its curse, because everybody since time immemorial wanted to have Cyprus as a foothold, as an unsinkable aircraft carrier. I'm sorry, I cannot accommodate, I cannot be an aircraft carrier of anyone, you know, and the fact, for instance, that in the northern part, Turkey has bases, naval bases, the army, now drone bases, they are there to stay. And the issues are much wider than simply Cypriot Turks and Cypriot Greeks not getting together. I mean, very often I get frustrated with some of the professors because they even professors, well-learned people, say, well, Greeks and Turks never got along. Greeks and Turks are in Cyprus. They cannot get along. How terrible. Let's see if we can fix them. I'm sorry, that is too question, and it's I almost find it insulting. And
thank you for your valuable.
The other thing that also that disturbed me is the professor saying, how can you call it invasion and occupation when we are in a place where there are Turks and they have not asked us to leave? And I was tempted to say, but I didn't say, that the professor, that is almost, neo-Ottomanism. What do you mean? I mean, that's where I said, and I got really frustrated. They're Cypriot Turks, and they're very, very proud of it. So how can you relegate them down to well, not down to, I mean, Nasia, just a minute. I'm hearing my Arya. Nasia. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought there was an issue with. I'm in love with my dog.
No problem.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say, like, about the Turkish Cypriots will, since 2004, literally all of the pollings, all of the how do you say, all of the pollings and all of the kind of voting, we always said like pro-peace answers.
Yeah, and you are right, and the Cypriot community voted against the Annan plan. I mean, that we don't forget that. That was lessons learned from that, of what some of the things that should not have been done. Okay, mind you, if you aggregate the no vote as part of the entire population of the island, you have something like 60% of the people altogether voting no. So, but irrespective, that is yesterday's story. Let's see how we can go forward. Let's see if the two leaders can make some headway on the 26th of August. Now they will have a meeting. There is some talk that these meetings will become more and more regular, to see if we can go to the 5+1 formula and to see if we can go forward. I do not know if we can. I want to be able to future-proof our country. I participate in debates, and it's good to talk about the past. Of course, it is good to talk about the past, because the past is also present, but we should be forward-looking. We should be looking at our country and say, how do we want our country to be 10, 20, 30 years from now? We will not be able to agree, as I often say, about the history of the past, but let us see if we can agree about the history of the future. Do we have a common vision of where we want to go, or are we going in strategically two different directions? A two-state solution. Does Turkey really mean it? I do not know. I have doubts if Turkey really means a two-state solution. Or is it a gambit? These are the things that we should be discussing, to see how we can see, I repeat, how our country should be, for you, for your families, for your children, and for everybody. I am, my generation messed it up, and the minimum that we owe to you is a huge apology, even though that doesn't cut the butter. It breaks my heart, because I was born in 1954. It was an anti-colonial struggle, but it was a Cyprus problem, as it were, in different forms, quote unquote. That was a British invention, the divide and rule, which was, I do not want to die with the Cyprus question still open, and the Cyprus problem still there. I want to have a solution, but of course, we all know that the devil is in the details.
Right. Well, I want to stay for a bit in the geopolitical aspect of the Cyprus problem, and moving very briefly away from the Turkey part of it all. This question is relevant to what you said earlier about the British bases, as much as it is to your previous position as a former High Commissioner to the UK. So recently, due to the situation with Iran, the President has expressed dissatisfaction regarding the status of the British bases, and he has indicated political will for a possible shift of the status of the bases through negotiations with the UK. To what extent do you think that it is actually possible to negotiate the status of the bases?
I don't think it's possible, Yanos, to renegotiate the status of the bases as such. Different modalities, yes. But as things are right now, I do not know if it is politically feasible to to challenge the existence of the bases, even though we never accepted the establishment of the bases on the island, because we still see them as vestiges of colonialism. And of course, we have the situation with the Chagos Islands, which the International Court of Justice adjudicated that they are vestige of colonialism. You have a similar situation in Mauritius. I mean, you have a legal grounds to challenge the basis. It's not that you don't, but right now politically, I don't see it as feasible because I don't think the government is willing to open up another front, as it were. Okay, we have enough on our hands as it is, with trying to solve the Cyprus question and other issues on the agenda, European Union issues, the volatility of the Eastern Mediterranean, the Mecca agreement, the recent Mecca agreement, and how that affects us. And I don't think they're willing to do that. And what good would it do at this stage practically? I'm not sure. Now, if the bases were to become NATO bases, that's another story. If they become part of the security system, a future security system, that I do not know. But the British will have to consent, because I repeat, legally, the bases are not part of the Republic of Cyprus, even though physically they are on the island, but they are not, and they cannot function without the cooperation of the government. But to challenge their status, I don't think so, Yanos. I think it was rightly the president said it, because the existence of the base also put us as Cypriots at risk. We had the drone that hit the bases, and a couple of days ago, Iran said that anyone that assists the Americans, anyone that assists in the war against us, they are legitimate targets for us. And the name of Bulgaria was mentioned, and Cyprus was also mentioned as possible targets. We do not want to play that game. We want to decouple ourselves from all these things, and actually we want to. I know it sounds like a cliche, but to be a bridge, a humanitarian bridge, to be a predictable and dependable security enabler in the region, to continue to do that function, but not to be a part of the theater of war. Certainly not.
I think Yanos already raised a really important point, and you already expanded really well, Mr. Evriviades. I'm sorry for saying Mr. again. I apologize. It's just a matter of habit.
Mr. Erdem.
My question is, again, adjacent to what Yanos said, and also what you expanded on, the geopolitical sense of Cyprus and how it essentially functions as the unsinkable ship, unsinkable fleet, the aircraft carrier, exactly. And when we are, I feel like there is this. This is just me expanding on my thoughts before I give you my question. If we establish that it is impossible for Britain and Turkey to fully decouple themselves, like without us first decoupling from us, from our perspective, if they, from a geopolitical strategic perspective, there is no way for these external countries to decouple themselves from Cyprus. How can we even imagine that? How can we see a future of us being a bridge? When you said it, because a couple of months ago, the illusion of normality was kind of shattered a little bit when Iran, there was a drone at the Euripides base in Iran, and that kind of shattered that illusion of normality, that we are in this very troubled part of the world. Again, as you said, it's a curse, not a blessing. More of a curse than a blessing recently. And my question is, I believe also you were a former ambassador of Cyprus to Israel, and obviously it's obvious what's happening in the Mediterranean. I believe that, there is a genocide. This is my personal take, but do you see Israel's growing relationship with the Republic of Cyprus as primarily a relationship based on Cyprus's own national interests, or do you see it as a broader strategic alignment against Turkey? And if the relationship is primarily strategic, how confident are you that Israeli interests will continue to coincide with Greek Cypriot interests if those interests eventually diverge? That's all. I think there was a long question.
No. It's an excellent question. Thank you for asking it and for putting it on the table and giving me the opportunity to share some of my thoughts on the subject. Indeed, my first ambassadorial post was to Israel, 2017 to 2003 years, and I worked very hard to promote the relations between the two countries. At the same time, what I see happening in Gaza and in the West Bank with the settlers, believe me, I do not clap. I do not clap. The cooperation that we have with Israel is part of our overall policy to have cooperation with all countries in the region, and we do hope that at some point we will do the same, of course, with Turkey, because geography, as we said so many times before, geography is destiny. No island is an island. So we have to come to an accommodation with Turkey, no question about it, because this is our neighborhood, this is our geography. And we do the same thing with Israel. Israel is not, it is a cooperation agreement. It is not an alliance. There isn't a comparable Article 5 as you have in NATO, or as they claim now in the Mecca agreement, where an attack on one is an attack of all. Israel is not going to fight for us. I mean, if God forbid, if something happens on the island, Israel is not going to say, yes, we will fight. No, we're not oblivious to realities. It would be delusional to think that Israel would fight anybody else. And I do not know if Greece will come to our aid. I have questions about that as well. But it is not. So it is cooperation. It's not an alliance. It's a cooperation, and it is. Turkey plays in the big league. Erdem, Janos, and Berk. All these countries. Let's say Israel, Cyprus, and Greece will gang up on Turkey to attack Turkey. No. This is not happening, and but one form of cooperation leads to another. I mean, that's why Mecca comes also into existence now between the Mecca agreement between Turkey, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia. So there is a totally new ball game, geostrategic ball game that it is happening in the Eastern Mediterranean, in the Middle East, in the European theater, in Asia. I mean, these things, we talk about Asia, we talk about India, and we think that it is far. No, India is very, very close. All these things come together. You have different theaters, strategic theaters, but all of them, they fit into each other. So India, for instance, is concerned of what is happening with the Mecca agreement, because Pakistan is also a nuclear country. Israel. So all these things are moving. They have to do with the fact of shall I say, lack of American leadership? Shall I say the fact that our American friends are not trusted as they were trusted before? At the same time, President Trump welcomed the Mecca agreement, and he says basically that if you have countries that are able to take care of themselves security-wise, it means that America will have to do less and then really concentrate more on Asia and concentrate more on China. So all these things come together. What is happening in Ukraine affects Cyprus. What is happening in the Middle East affects us. So we really have to think ahead and to think several steps in order to move forward. But coming back to Israel, no, it's a cooperation, and we do have disagreements with Israel too. Don't think that the relationship is one of all milk and honey. And mind you, Turkey itself, which says that they are pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, because they have not announced that Hamas is a terrorist organization. Trade with Israel and Turkey goes in the billions. It is business as usual. So I take all these things with a grain of salt, and I always try to go behind the lines to connect the dots, if you know what I mean. Am I answering your question, Erdem? Or I see you want to follow up. Feel free to follow up.
I think that was a brilliant answer. My only small thing is, I'm wondering, do you envision a future where we as Cypriots, can we decouple ourselves from the geopolitical reality, or is it an inevitable curse of our geography that, regardless if we have a stable Eastern Mediterranean, can you envision like a future where this decoupling can happen? That was the only bit that I
okay, fine. My answer is yes. My answer is yes, because this is 2026. We're moving forward. We are probably the only country in the world. The only country in the world. Ella. Yeah. This is my area. Daddy loves area. Okay. Go to mommy. No. I love you too.
This is the sympathy of our videos. This is the reality of the videos.
They have heart in them.
Yeah.
Okay,
oh
good.
My gosh.
No, it's okay.
Manamu.
Okay. Okay. Now, and there isn't a single country in the world that has the security system that we have, guarantees of alliance and stuff like that. Not a single one. And mind you, historically, all of these countries, Turkey, Greece, the United Kingdom, all of them committed aggression against Cyprus in different ways and in different degrees. I'm not putting them all in the same basket. I mean, 67, 74, we had the Greek military junta. It was a junta. It was not elected. It was not elected by the Greek people. The Greek people obviously suffered greatly. They exported their adventurism in Cyprus. They had the putsch, and then which triggered the invasion. Okay, Turkey invades, calls it a peace operation, with the idea of restoring the status quo. Status quo has been restored 52 years down the line. Is still there. And the United Kingdom, of course, another guarantor power, made sure that nothing happens to its bases, and basically that was it. So all of them did not serve the interests of the Cypriots. So this antiquated system has to go. I think, I repeat, we are the only country in the world that has such a system. So yes, it may not happen tomorrow, but certainly I think we are mature. We have learned the lessons of the past, terrible lessons of the past. We are mature. We do not need guarantor powers and overlords, all of them playing their own strategic game against us. Why should my security as Cyprus and the Cypriots, why should it be contingent on what happens between Greece and Turkey? I do not want, of course, a war between Greece and Turkey. Of course not. Nobody wants it. But God forbid, if something happens, we will certainly be exposed to that. I mean, there are daily violations of the airspace of Cyprus, F-16s running over here, there. There is insecurity. Security is very, very fundamental. But, and that's a do-or-die issue, the security issue. So it should, I think, these kind of alliances and guarantees create more insecurity than they solve security.
Yes, we agree. Thank you for your answer. I would like to ask my question, and it was about the discussion. So, Professor Evriviades, you emphasized...
Professor, I'm not a professor. I just work in a think tank, and as I told you, Berk, just call me Euripides, please. Yeah.
Okay. His Excellency, maybe I can call you.
Not even that. I'm no longer. I used that yesterday's story.
It's okay. All right. Evriviades, you emphasize being a Cypriot of Greek ethnic background rather than hyphenated Cypriot.
Yes.
Yeah, hyphenated Cypriot. For younger Cypriots who increasingly feel a shared Cypriot identity, how can we build this shared identity politically while still respecting our different histories and cultures?
I think, well, Berk, Erdem, and Janos, being Cypriots of Greek ethnic background, or being Cypriots of Turkish ethnic background, or Cypriot Armenians for that matter, Cypriot Maronites or Cypriot Ladies, all these things are not antithetical. I think they're complementary with an E, and shows that Cyprus is a quilt. We're not the only multicultural and multi-identity society in the world. I mean, all of us can be proud of our roots, okay, without denying them. But at the same time, I repeat, our homeland is Cyprus. We were born in this place. We are baked under the same sun, as we said before. We're not children of a lesser God. We can be proud, and the more we accentuate the Cypriotness, I think the better it is for us. Without denying, I repeat, our ethnic background, our culture, our religion, our things. But at the same time, to go above that and say, listen, we have something greater, which is our homeland that unites us, and our motherland is Cyprus. It should be nobody else. With respect, I mean, you have many Spanish-speaking countries, but Colombia is Colombia, but nobody would say, for instance, we are Spaniards. We have a Spanish background. We speak the language, but we are Costa Ricans. Maybe it's a poor example, but I believe in our national identity. I mean, so I think it is possible, and the more we accentuate this, the better. I repeat, without denying it, because there are some other peoples that are saying, no, I am a Greek. There are others that are saying, no, I am a Turk. I said, no, I don't. I mean, we should be Cypriots, not hyphenated Cypriots, but you can be Cypriot Greek or Cypriot Turk or whatever, like I said, and there is not thesis antithesis. Before the ceasefire, the ceasefire line opened up in 2003. The late Mr. Denktash was saying, no, you cannot open up the checkpoints, because the moment you open up the checkpoints, it's going to be Kosovo, it's going to be bloodshed, it's going to be everything. The ceasefire line opened up. There are millions of visits across very little incidents, and I think at the end of the day, what do people want? They want to send their kids to school. They want to have a good economy. They want to have economic opportunities. They want to have their security, better life. 3-4 things. I mean, that's what people want, and any government worth its salt should provide those to its people.
I 100% agree.
Thank you very much. Oh, yeah. So, did you want to say something?
No, I'm fine, Janos.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
I have the feeling that I'm talking a lot.
Not at all. We're enjoying the discussion. I think I can speak for all of us here. But I do want to go back to the geopolitical aspect of it briefly, and specifically about the negotiations of the Cyprus problem. So President Christodoulidis claims that he wants to restart negotiations, obviously from the point at which they were cut off at Crans-Montana. Now, the president himself left Crans-Montana along with the President Anastasiadis, went back when he was the foreign minister, and he cited differences with Turkey regarding the issue of security, guarantees, and so on, the settlers, the property issue. So, in your opinion, why is the president going back to these negotiations, which, might I add, according to Van Ercherman, he said that if they don't actually go anywhere, then the status quo will not be returned to, meaning that, something entirely unknown. So why is the president going back to these negotiations if the Turkish government, with whom Christodoulidis disagreed, has not really changed anything in these positions?
Janos, it's a good question. Thank you for asking it. Obviously, I do not speak on behalf of the president. As I said, I have no connections with the government, none whatsoever. Okay, it was a mistake to walk out or to conclude Crans-Montana. It was a mistake. And I think all the participants there share part of the responsibility of not really hammering it out, including, mind you, the Secretary General himself. He should not have declared it closed at a stalemate. He should have declared a recess, and maybe come back after 2 days, 3 days, 2-3 months, and not to let so many years, to go by. And President Christodoulidis has part of the responsibility. Andreas Mavroyiannis has part of the responsibility. I do not know about Ostil Nami or anybody else that was there at the time. For sure, they said we came very, very close. Everybody says we came very, very close. I don't really know how close, because I was never really part of this closed shop discussing the Cyprus question. I'm not privy to. I was not there. Okay, it's from what I studied, from what I read, from what I talked to some people that they were there, and indeed there were serious issues dealing with security. It seems like everything else has been solved except security. Magari, inshallah. I do not know if everything else was solved and the only thing was pending was security, because if that's the issue, which is, I repeat, a do or die issue, I think we can find a solution. We can find a solution. We can have sunset clauses. We can have different ways of addressing, because security nowadays is not just military security. You don't get more security by having more armies. You get less security. Okay, so why the president wants to go back? Question to a logical question. My short answer would be, in diplomacy, we never put a full stop. We put a comma, we put a semicolon. The Secretary General is putting his weight behind it, and he can call a spade a spade. He made and I had it here ready. I found it again to refresh my memory. He made the 6-point strategic plan. We can work on that, but if everything else is solved, which I doubt, and the only thing left is security, for heaven's sakes, that should be addressed. It can be addressed, and it is doable, and it is solvable. We will not be the first ones. The worst international and domestic issues than ours that got solved: apartheid, the division of Germany, Vietnam, East Timor in Indonesia, the worst, and ours is the only one that it is not yet solved. So we have to give it another try. I'm not sure. I repeat that Turkey wants a two-state solution. By that, I do not mean that Turkey, because the two-state solution is presented as having two separate, autonomous, independent states on the island doing their own diplomacy. I don't think Turkey wants that, because Turkey wants to control the entire Eastern Mediterranean. Turkey is bothered by the fact that Cyprus has, of course, delimited its exclusive economic zone with Egypt, with Israel. Those are the things that Turkey is bothered. So if you have two separate, independent, autonomous states, it means what? We draw a line as things are right now. There's still going to be issues to resolve. In any divorce, you resolve issues. I think it's a bad formula, but okay. I mean, Turkey keeps on insisting it. The distinguished leader, Mr. Erdogan, dances around it. But let's hope that we continue on having a federation, which I believe it is the best way forward for the people of Cyprus as a whole. And then when things really come to our hands, then we can challenge the other questions of getting rid, as Erdman said, and I admire that vision of getting rid this antiquated system of guarantors, and decoupling ourselves from all of them so we can live in peace and harmony. When they asked me, listen, your narrative is complicated. What do you actually want? I said, listen, we want nothing more and nothing less other than what is other peace-loving and democratic nations. Malta, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Papua New Guinea, Barbados, Jamaica. That's what we want. We want nothing more and nothing less for our people. Why should I be able to do something because I'm a Cypriot Greek and not being able to do something because somebody is a Cypriot Turk? That's almost apartheid, guys. That's discriminatory. You know, it will not withstand in any court of law.
I do agree. I have a small follow-up to the question. Since you have mentioned apartheid and the federation and the agreed-on framework, basically it's regarding to what extent Crans-Montana, or the solution that was being discussed at Crans-Montana, however much we may know about it, would actually lead to a distance from this apartheid vision. And to be very specific, the Anastasiadis Eroglu convergences on which Crans-Montana were based on have certain contradictions, I could describe them. For example, they state that the federal constitution shall be the supreme law of the land and it will be binding on the constituent states. They also state, however, that the federal laws will not encroach upon constituent state laws within the constituent states' area of competences and vice versa. And it also states that neither side can claim authority or jurisdiction over the other. So if you have two very powerful constituent states and a central government that is uncertain the extent to which it can actually involve itself in the affairs of the constituent states, then to what extent are these convergences, and therefore the solution that was being discussed in Crans-Montana, not a soft partition itself?
Well, it is. We just don't call it that. It is a soft partition. Okay. It is a soft, if not harder, confederation. We just don't call it that. The idea is functionality. The functionality, implementation of what is agreed, and the name can. I'm not really interested about the name as such. It's just that psychologically, people there are sound bites. They say but in fact, as you say, it is a lot of it is separation. A lot of it is confederal. You know, we may not want to admit it, but that's what it is. But you know, these things are not going to happen overnight, Janos. We're going to be sufficiently united, but also sufficiently divided, in the sense that the daily lives of the people are not going to change, and no one community should be able to impose its will on the other. Because when my Cypriot Turkish compatriots tell me about what happened in 64, as terrible as things were, of course, and the need to have the security, and hence the need to constantly have Turkish troops on the island, my answer is, of course, your absolute security is my absolute insecurity. So, and vice versa. So you have a double security problem on the island. But I repeat, the constituent states are going to stay the way they are. Okay, there will be territorial adjustments, of course. As a map was submitted, Secretary General Guterres also mentioned the Morphu, and so there will be territorial adjustments, but it will be basically two separate constituent states, and we come together in a federal structure that guarantees the unity, independence, territorial integrity of the country, defense, as opposed foreign policy too, are going to be, you know, we started with the Cypriot Greek side wanting a strong federal central government, and slowly we have moved to where those convergence that you mentioned, Janos, you know. So, but these things are not going to happen from one day to the next, I'm afraid. But, you know, it saddens me to see our homeland like this.
Thank you very much. That's a nice answer.
I love the conversation. Yeah, I think the only difference between the confederation and federation here is like the right to secede, because to be able to have that right, you need to be a two recognized state, like the Belgium, Flanders and Walloon, like the other one. But what are we gonna do? Are we gonna recognize TRNC for 1 second, 1 millisecond, and then unite, and then
that's what this is what Mr. Denktash used to say. So that's why we should distinguish between political equality, which will exist and exists, as opposed to sovereign equality. It's exactly what you said, Berk. It's exactly what you said. There is a difference between sovereign equality and political equality. Two separate things. So that's why, because behind it is secession, and we do not want secession, because let's see, you have cessation, and you will have the de facto ceasefire line becomes the Euro border. What does that mean? It means that the border, we're going to be relying more and more on Greece for our defense. Cypriot Turks are going to be relying more and more on Turkey for its defense, and then I think that would spell disaster. I mean, the whole idea is to I repeat, to decouple ourselves.
Yeah, I get it. That's logical. And I have a question about the division, since we're talking about. So my question is, how can youth organizations from both communities help to construct what you called the history of the future, when formal education systems on the both sides of the island often keep the young people trapped in conflicting narratives of the past?
No, it's another huge question. I thank you, Berk. I wish I had the answer to that. I mean, because the educational system, obviously, the narratives, each community, wants to validate itself by constantly pushing their own narrative and saying, well, we were 100% right and they were 100% wrong, and vice versa. That is not the case, because we all know that the Cypriots are not angels. We all know that the mistakes that they were done would be more and more of what you're doing, more and more of the Cypriot youth coming together, accentuating the unity and the things that unite us, without ignoring the things that divide us. I'm not saying that we should ignore them, but we should agree to disagree without being disagreeable. There are more things, I believe, that unite us than separate us, because at the end of the day, people want to do the 4 or 5 things that I said. I think send their kids to school, have their own security, have economic opportunities, and that's it. So the more the youth comes together, the more you join each other, and to understand each other without having the baggage of the past. I mean, it's not easy for somebody to do it who has lost a father in the intercommunal conflict, or there are a lot of grave and massive violations of human rights that they were done. And when you talk to somebody that suffered immediately, they cannot often distance themselves in order to go in the formula that I'm suggesting. But I think the more we do, coming together in different fields, youth, doctors coming together, poets coming together, all these things, the better. That doesn't mean we put a seal on the permanent division of the island. Of course not. It means greater cooperation, greater understanding. But how the biggest problem for me is what is happening in the region, and Turkish's in German they call it the Weltanschauung worldview. I repeat, because Turkey thinks buyut, big, and they want to control the Eastern Mediterranean. There's no question about it in my mind. So I think that is the key. We can unlock that. In the meantime, we have to keep having all these joint meetings, joint cooperation. What you're doing, multiply it by 10, multiply it by 100, and more than happy for me to help in that direction and to share my thoughts. I was going to say wisdom or lack thereof, because you may have a better chance to reunify the country than what we did, because you do not have the baggage of the past. And I'm not saying baggage in the negative sense. I repeat, if somebody that has suffered may not be able to do what we're saying in theory. There are a lot of things that are coming out. Some of the things that they were taboo, 50 years ago are no longer taboo, and things are coming out of what happened in '74 with the invasion, which was also was an army, it was state, okay, it wasn't a paramilitary organization. So those people may not be able to. They will need their time, but even them agree. A lot of them that I talk to. That we should be going forward, and it serves no useful purposes to be prisoners of the past and keep on rehearsing and reciting what happened in the past and who was right and who was wrong, and to play that blame game. We're never going to come out of that.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree that this blame game, this tit for tat, it's a cycle that I think is very hard to break, or it might be impossible to break, because it's a dead end on both sides.
It's also politics, huh? It's also politics because Cypriot Turkish leader Erkuman Christodoulidis, they don't want to be quote unquote accused of being soft. They don't want to be accused of not being. It's politics. It's a dirty business. It's a dirty.
It definitely is, and I think the people who pay the price are always the usual folk that you can say, to the average person. And I want to ask something that I think is interesting, because I agree with you on every front on this. Like, we should get rid of this binaries of I think you mentioned in the beginning of the conversation on how you hear people say the Greeks and Turks, they will always be opposing, like this reductionist binary, especially when it's on the context of Cyprus. And also you mentioned how as Cypriots we share the same island. When I look at Cyprus, that's the only place. When I look on the map, I don't feel any. I don't feel the question. I don't feel it. What I mean is, like, I only feel a connection when I look on the map to Cyprus, not to anywhere else. Just like all of you here. But the interesting thing here is, like, when Berk said about how the future can get together, and there's the identity thing, there's a trauma thing that you mentioned, obviously, which is very fair. Everyone has pain and suffering from the past that hasn't healed properly, or hasn't had the chance to heal. But I'm gonna link the identity thing with politics a bit, because whenever I feel like the examples of, you can say, doctors and other civil unions, civil societies coming together, we usually have an issue. I believe, as a Turkish Cypriot, that I observed, which is we have this issue of recognition by implication happening.
Yes.
Sometimes, yes. Which is I completely understand. If I was to put myself in the shoes of a Greek Cypriot, I would understand how that might appear. But I think for me, as a Turkish Cypriot, it's very hard to shake off. As someone who is interested in bicommunal dynamics, clearly here, I'm wondering how that can be abridged, because I still struggle to see how can that be done.
I think we do have mechanisms, which is community, cannot be state to state. As you said something which is key, putting yourself into somebody else's position, and that should be done. I mean, Cypriot Turks should understand, put themselves in the Cypriot Greek position, and of course vice versa. Okay, but we do have channels. We have bicommunal committees. I mean, at the community level, which is almost a state level, but about the community level, at least it's the fig tree. Let's put it this way. tree. Things are going on substance. Now, what cannot happen is, cooperation with the so-called TRNC and to have the flag and to have the flags. That's not going to fly, because we also need the people. We have to bring the people with us in order for the referenda to pass as well. We have to educate. It sounds didactic. It sounds as if we know better and they know less. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying you have, the people have to come with us. The people they have to see the benefits of a solution, and the benefits of a solution have to be upfront. Plus, people get used to their daily lives, and they're afraid of the unknown. They're afraid of what might happen in the future, because they don't know how things are going to go. There is that, but more things can be done at the community level, which is, God forbid, this Ebola crisis, when we had COVID, when we have this mad cow disease, these diseases do not understand the demarcation lines. You have to have cooperation, but let it be on the substance and not on trying to harvest political hay.
Just wanted to kind of dive into more of interesting phenomenon, let's say, that we Turkish Cypriots, right? Not to say I'm gonna say we endure the greatest hardship, and something I know every community have its hardships. However, right now, especially post 74, and especially nowadays, we have to challenge, we have to deal with two communities' narratives. Who are these two communities? First of all, Greek Cypriot right and Turkish right, center, and even left, because there is a huge, immense support for the continuation of the status quo in Turkey. So I don't even consider them just right and left, just Turkey, I will say. Unfortunately, that's another weird phenomenon, which I wrote an article. Okay, I don't want to make an announcement of my article, but anyway.
Send the article. Send the article.
Yeah, I will. No problem. But the thing is, this phenomenon is so interesting, and we have to deal with the two communities. It's almost like we are fighting from the two fronts, like the Germans.
Yeah.
And it's so tiring. And many people just give up. Many people just say, oh, whatever, let's just be in this system and something. It will be much, much, much, much easier if one of the fronts were to be closed. Or most of
one of the what to be closed, Berk?
The front. What I mean is in the Greek speaking community, or at least with the initiation of the Republic of Cyprus, as a government or as a state, to actually re-educate its own people to have a more non-aligned history and more positivity towards Turkish Cypriots and such. Maybe there are, but what I'm hearing is can I say, we also have our own narratives actually pushed by other countries, without more army, more security, they will come and kill. But okay, but why is not Republic of Cyprus not teaching Turkish Cypriots about, okay guys, look, under EU nothing will happen, this is this, look, federation is this is that, teaching these things. I don't think it's so much. Or for example, a recent event that happened with the I think Turkish Cypriot foreign ministry was about to give some kind of education on something, but the Republic of Cyprus foreign ministry kind of blocked it.
You're talking about I read it. This was very, very recent. I read it in the paper that the Cypriot-Turkish interlocutor was going to brief ambassadors on the Home for Cooperation at the Green Line, and that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Cyprus was calling ambassadors, telling them not to go. If it's true, it is a stupid move.
These and many others.
Certainly, I would not support something like that. No, and you are right. People have to be educated of the benefits. Of the benefits, they have to be educated of what all these things mean and allay the fears of the other side. Of course, we trust, but you will verify. There will be verifications. I mean, because they say, well, I can trust you today, but how can I trust somebody else tomorrow? Obviously there will be, the institutions themselves have to be strengthened so they can withstand the test of time. But in this day and age, 2026, members of the European Union, Council of Europe. I remember when I was ambassador in the Council of Europe, my foreign minister at the time, Kasoulides, who is the best president of Cyprus that we never had, told me, you are authorized to tell the Assembly of the Council of Europe that we are willing to accept any and all conventions that protect human rights, democracy, the rule of law, with all their verification mechanisms. Okay, you give up part of your sovereignty to another organization to come to examine and to tell you whether you're doing things rightly or wrong. The European Union takes Cyprus to court. We are members of the European Union, but the European Union, they take us to court and they say you're not doing this correctly, you're not doing the other thing correctly. So, these things have to be told, and they have to be, we will agree, but these things are going to be verified for the benefit of both sides. But you are right in raising it, Berk. I mean, there is, in some ways, our conversation reminds me of conversations that we had, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And it saddens me. I said, have we not really gone forward? I mean, I can see things not being like this in 74, after the invasion. And but, it's 52 years down the line. But people, new generation, settlers have their kids. Those kids were born in Cyprus. I can say so-called Turkish Republic or Northern Cyprus because it is not based on international law and has been condemned by the United Nations, by Security Council, by the European Court of Human Rights. But I cannot say so-called baby. A baby is born. He, she has the human rights, and this is their home.
So
thank you too.
Yeah.
I have something small to add as well that
Sure.
I just remembered in the Al Arabiya interview. Again, I don't want to go back again, but
No, whatever you want, man. I mean, I enjoy the conversation because it's easygoing and we're able to speak our mind without really, disciplined thoughts, are afraid of what we might say, something that might be misunderstood. So I really enjoyed the conversation.
I'm glad as well. I'm loving it as well. I remembered in your conversation with Professor Hassan Ünal, there was this, what Hassan Ünal brought up was Mr. Ünal said that which is a narrative that's quite common quite widespread in the Turkish Cypriot and also in the Turkish sphere, let's say, which is that if Turkey leaves, all Turkish Cypriots will be massacred and all that. And again, I think you made you gave an example of how things are not the same as in 74 or 63. The island is not run by militias, all loyal to anyone.
We can demilitarize our we can do 1,000
exactly.
things.
I was about to say the same thing. My question was on linking back to my old question on possible future of a geopolitically less active East Mediterranean. Could you see Cyprus demilitarized in a way that, how can we? I don't know how to phrase this properly, but because I feel like people's traumas are triggered when each side's security concerns are raised. So instead, I think I believe that Cyprus should be demilitarized, but at this point, I find it very difficult when contextually on what we have. You said we were talking the same things that you remembered of a conversation 15 years ago, and I think and what Berk also said, I think the Republic of Cyprus especially should do more to help relieve those traumas. I know that they can't be fully healed because of the existing status quo, the existing division, but I think there is a way to. I think we should have been more efficient. Just that was the thing that was in my head.
No. You're right, but they resurrect the boogeyman. and which is the easiest way to unify, quote unquote, your constituents. I mean, when they say that if the Turkish troops withdraw, then the next day the Cypriot Greeks are going to go mad and they start massacring people, it's just to trigger the boogeyman, the insecurity, so people cave in themselves and they say, okay, we are fine the way that we are. We are certainly not fine the way we are, because the situation is not sustainable, in my view. The demographics will also are changing, is something that we really need to study carefully, because our identity as Cypriots is being constantly challenged by the day, and it is being chipped away by the day. Okay, but we can find Erdem. Inshallah, Turkish troops withdraw, and then we demilitarize. We can have, a Cyprus for the Cypriots, whole and free. What would Cypriot Turks say to allay their fears? Okay, let's say for the theory, Turkish troops withdraw, all of them. How do Cypriot Turks want to feel secure? Give it, with demilitarization, with
I feel like, for example, sorry for cutting you off, but for example, a Turkish Cypriot might point at, Elam or certain far-right nationalist marches, certain packages of lumping as Turks, and it is scary for a lot of Turkish Cypriots that they feel, and this is like it's this trauma being awakened in some sense.
No, for sure. And we have the opposite here, because they will say, the grey wolves, and they can say the same thing.
Exactly.
So, you know what? I don't think they're not mainstream. They're a minority. Okay, I mean, and Elam comes more, for instance, in migration, which again triggers the fears of the people. Elam it did not get into the parliament because saying, well, we should throw the Turks out in the sea and we should fight. Nobody says that. Nobody says that. They became because of migration and more Greekness than Cypriotness. I agree with you, which I do not agree, But I think I trust the mainstream goodness of our people, and it is also our challenge to put the extremes, make them more moderate. So. There are, I repeat, in 2026, different ways of guaranteeing security. Security does not come through more arms and armaments and drones and the highest possible military technology. More military and more arms is not more security, but less security, because security nowadays is such a wide term. It's not just physical security, it is environmental security, it is medicine security, it's all these things that people identify with, and all these things that people need. And so what the professor was saying was just simply, taking out the boogeyman in order to unify. I like I said, I mean, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but when he said, how can you invade and occupy a country when there are Turks there and they are not asking us to leave? I said, that begs the question. That begs the question. I mean, so anywhere there are Turks, quote unquote, as defined by Ankara, quote unquote, that means they have the license to go in and invade and occupy and keep the land for 52 years, because often they're telling me, what are you going to give in the negotiations? Well, start with the territory. 80.
I also want to point out, I'm so sorry to cut you. I also want to point out some other argument that does not actually make any kind of sense to hear from any kind of professor. because I trusted that he's a professor, but I'm really shocked that he didn't know this, because he argued that a two-state solution within the EU will bring immediate economic collaboration. Why in your... And so I have to ask you, for the sake of this YouTube channel and like this program that we're making, however, I know the answer, but why in your view would a bizonal bicommunal federation offer a far better economic and social framework the youth compared to a two-state scenario? So you don't even know that EU does never ever accept two
EU is
one
clear.
island.
Yeah, EU is not going to accept two Cypruses in the European Union. That is clear. The other issue that we also need to stress again and again is that divisions have always been a source of conflict and instability. I think with the federation in the European Union, it also means that we have our standards. We're going to cooperate and to have cooperation and better economic opportunities at the aggregate level. If it is two separate countries, you cannot have two separate systems on the island while one part of it, as it were, is part of the European Union. That's why the European Union would not ever accept two Cypruses in it, because also the European Union is an ongoing peace experiment which is based on democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, despite its shortcomings. And as I said, I mean that Cyprus, as a subject of international law, is one country, and the right of self-determination has been exercised in 1960, and it cannot be legally divided as proposed.
Yes, I mean, I would love him to also come here and let's talk like civilized people, or like we all talk. We make a little brainstorm and we agree. We explain, we agree or we disagree.
I've been more than happy to, and I actually have been trying to participate more in these debates, but sometimes it is a lonely voice in the wilderness, because because there is so many workshops that are happening, so many think tanks also in Turkey, and it's important. So right now, like I said, I'm not a government employee, and I want to participate more in these meetings to have a good, as you say, robust, civilized exchange, agree to disagree without being disagreeable. So if you can have me in mind in the future, it's been a great pleasure and actually an honor to speak to you, and I'm making full circle if I say congratulations in what you're doing. Sometimes I know it is difficult to see immediate impact, but Rome was not built in a day. It takes time. It takes time to educate. It takes time to change the mindsets. You can get a new car, but how do you get a new mind? And these things take time, and we all have to do our share. But you have to do it, and you have to put your foot down on what kind of country you want for. I repeat, for tomorrow, because this is your country. This is not. It's my country too, but I'm going to see the Almighty or not to see the Almighty. I do not know what's going to happen, but
True, we all gonna see. Yes, Mr. Erdem.
The Almighty, whoever he or she or it is, because the Almighty could be it. By it, I mean energy. It could be that, but that's another. As another issue to talk about religion and about metaphysics and what will happen. But okay, it's not for.
I feel like you're referencing to Greek mythologies a little bit.
Somewhere.
I see your true colors.
I climbed Kilimanjaro. about 2-3 months ago. I climbed Kilimanjaro, and now I'm in the process of writing some reflections, as it were, from the roof of Africa, and I make some references to these things because it's you read you reach a certain age, and then you say, what the hell was I doing 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago? That I should have gone in another direction and had a different mindset. Anyhow, that we are going in a tangent now right now.
Well, okay, I think that we've produced a lot of content. We would like to thank you once again for attending this discussion.
Çok merci. Teşekkür ederim.
My fellow Turkish Cypriot friends are going to assess if this was correct. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
but,
it was really good.
I exhaust my Turkish very easily, I'm afraid, but it's
Perfecto.
Yes.
It was a pleasure having you.
It was great. Guys, it's been a great pleasure to be to have been a guest, and really appreciated this free-flowing, easy, relaxed exchange. No tensions. Keep doing more of it. Anything that I can do, I am at your disposal to do. And let's stay in touch. I mean, nowadays, people can be so close in touch. At the same time, the paradox is that they're so close, but at the same time, yet so far. Because there is less and less conversation in an age of information. But that's also another story.
People who speak the truth have nothing to hide. So.
God bless our Cyprus.
Amen.
Our Cyprus, Cyprus.
Guys. You two have all of
Completely.
us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's
God
see
bless
you again.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
You too.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Thank you guys for watching.
All the best
Bye.
to you and to your families and to all your loved ones. Perfect health always, happiness, prosperity, and success.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Right quest for you as well.